couple of years ago, I decided to ask my grandmother about a little book sitting inside a cabinet in her home. I knew the book was important because everything inside that cabinet is special. It's the place where she keeps the things most precious to her. I should say that my grandmother is a very sentimental person who's always had a deep reverence and love for her parents. And she's had keepsakes of theirs around the home for as long as I can remember. I grew up around these objects, a pair of her father's reading glasses, her mother's rocking chair, their desk, and so on. And then there were these other items in this enclosed cabinet, which brings us back to that little book. It turns out it wasn't just some book, it was actually my great-grandmother's diary from when she was a young woman, written in 1914, years before my grandmother was born. I had heard plenty of stories about my great-grandmother over the years, but they were always about her as an older woman in the years before she died. I never had the privilege of meeting her. She died before I was born, and I found myself super intrigued to read these pages that held a version of my great-grandmother as a teenager. That's the special thing about keeping a diary or a journal. It allows the reader to reach into the pages and be transported into a daily log of a life lived, in this case, over 100 years ago. It made me think about my own journaling habit, something I picked up at the beginning of 2020 thanks to a tool called Roam Research. If you don't know much about Roam, I encourage you to watch my other videos on the subject. It's a tool that's quickly become the place where I put almost everything important to me. It's where my ideas go, where my notes go, where my tasks go, and in regards to what I want to talk about today, where my journal entries go. I started journaling in Roam because the tool does this really fascinating thing, prompting you not with an untitled TXT style blank page, but instead a note with today's date on the top. And you can't remove that date. It's a permanent feature. As you write and spin off new pages, it creates this historical timeline of what you were thinking about and working on. At first, I used it just to log the things I was reading and the links I was coming across, but slowly I started to add information about the day. I began to treat it as a real journal, and I found that having a journal felt really nice, especially in 2020 when there was a lot of uncertainty and things felt so up in the air. Being able to write down my thoughts and be honest about how I felt became an invaluable part of my morning ritual. I would wake up, open Roam, and begin writing about how I was feeling. And as the day progressed, I would keep adding more and more information. Then a month later, I might look back on those previous entries and realize how helpful those logs were in providing insight that allowed present me to understand how past me was living. The entries revealed how I was using my time, how I was feeling, what was important to me in those moments. I had always known that keeping a journal was a good idea, but Roam finally pushed me to actually do it. And as a bonus, I had this major life event this year as my wife and I bought a home in LA. Because I was journaling in Roam, I have this entry I excitedly wrote moments after I walked through the house for the first time, and I have other entries through the entire process of purchasing and moving in. I'm so thankful that I have these moments written down instead of just losing them in the ether of time. As I've settled into the habit of journaling, I've thought about how some of my favorite historical figures have kept journals of their own. Da Vinci, who, by the way, is an excellent person to consider when thinking about how to use Roam, famously kept diaries throughout his life, writing about what he was doing and what intrigued him. Another one of my favorites, Montaigne, is credited as the inventor of the essay, and his writings about life are so important to me that I actually keep them on display on my living room shelf. As I've logged more and more journal entries, I've begun to wonder, will someone look through my Roam graph in the same way that I look through my great-grandmother's journal or the world looks through Montaigne's? I believe the answer is yes, and thinking about it has slightly shifted the mental model I have for writing. Now, I don't mean that through an egotistical lens. What I mean is that actually future me is a completely different person, and I want to ensure that I leave the right information for him inside my graph. So when I write for multiple reasons. I write for myself today, who needs to process what I'm going through, but I'm also writing for that future version of myself who will benefit from having these ideas written down. And sure, I'm also writing for future people, maybe my own great-grandchildren who want to know about me in the same way that I wish I knew about my long-gone family members of the past. Writing through these lenses is interesting, but I try not to let it muddy what I put down on a page. I don't want to cage my thoughts or act like a voice of wisdom. That's not helpful. That's just disingenuous. I want to write about my anxieties and fears just as much as I want to write about my victories. Reading my great-grandmother's journal, some of my favorite entries are the ones that make her feel the most human. Her enjoying a batch of seafoam candy, whatever that is, or her writing about having a blue day. It's these moments that remind me that I am one human in a long line of humans, and that we've all had our ups and downs, our moments of happiness and our moments of sadness. There's a grounding nature to this. And so I hope that both future me and future others will benefit from the words of dealing with anxiety just as much as they benefit from the happier entries. It's honest. Reading the diary made me wish that I had more information from my great-grandmother. All I have is this one single journal and another notebook of hers. One of the great benefits of writing in Rome to me is knowing that it has a higher likelihood of being preserved over the long run simply because it can be backed up and duplicated so easily. I know that some of you might disagree with this. I've met a lot of people who are skeptical of digital systems and point to the many paper documents that have survived centuries. But I have my own reasons for not trusting paper to preserve my thoughts. Years ago, I lost my house to a massive wildfire, and with it, the journals I had kept for around 10 years. All of those words written within notebooks lined up on a single shelf, burned up. It's made me, as you might imagine, a bit nervous about anything that only exists in one place. That being said, I do know that there are downsides to digital systems, and I don't expect every word that I write to be preserved through all of history. A great example of this is how all the photos from the first few years of Twitter are gone, since at that time, Twitter didn't have native images, and the services people used to host them, like TwitPic and YFrog, have shut down. I lost a lot of photos that way, and there are a ton of other dead services which have taken my words with them, like Zanga and MySpace and so on. Things don't last forever, and it's important to keep that which is important to you in the places which will indeed last. I'm confident that Rome is going to be around for a long time, but it's also good to know that I can export every single thing I've written with a click of a button. I think it's a wholly positive thing how many people are capturing their lives alongside me in this day and age, using tools like Rome or other spaces like a blog or a YouTube channel to capture their lives. There's something to be said about the sheer amount of digital information our world is currently creating in contrast to previous generations. How many photos of us will our children have? How many blog posts and Instagram stories and YouTube videos will we leave behind? I know it's weird to think about, and it is funny to imagine my great-grandchildren reading my Twitter feed or trying to understand the joke I was making on TikTok. But honestly, I wish I had that sort of insight into my own grandparents or parents. It's a remarkable thing to leave this amount of material behind for those who will come after us. I'm really grateful that Rome has pushed me to build a journaling habit. I've said in previous videos about Rome that it's not just a collection of notes you put into a silo to forget about, but instead more like a sourdough starter for the mind, constantly growing as you feed it and birthing new ideas from the connections of past thoughts. Just as I'm currently enjoying the work that past me put into building my Rome graph and adding things like book notes, I know that future me is going to be thankful for every journal entry that I write. I want to clarify that some of these journal entries don't look that great. Some days my daily note is massive, and others it's just a few lines. Some days I'm writing thousands of words, and other days it's almost nothing, just a brief statement on how I'm feeling or what's keeping me busy. Other days, I'll be honest, it's totally blank, but I try and go back the next day and remember what I was doing, adding to it so that future me can benefit from those memories. If you haven't considered keeping a journal, you should. It may not feel that important in the moment, but it's one of those things that has exponential returns that become clear the more time goes on. In my great-grandmother's case, she created this historical document that's deeply important to me. Though she didn't write the diary for me, now it's the only thing of hers that I have, the only words of hers that I can read, the only insight into who she was as a person that I can grasp onto. My journal entries are important to me because they allow Rome to not just be a note-taking tool or even a productivity tool, but through them, it's now a communication tool. It's a social network in a way. allowing me to put the fullness of myself onto a page that can be read by those living in the future. I'm writing for both future me and for the others who want to know me, just like I'm here now in the present, wishing I had more information about those who came before.